What's up? This is Dan Friedenberg for FIGGERRIDOUT.com, and on a long enough timeline, all last names are made up. Mine's easy to mess up, but today I'm with Liz Benchwell. Benchwell?
Yeah, that was pretty close. That was pretty good. Yeah.
I met you through our multifamily real estate circle, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But Liz's career has been in the vaccine business, and she doesn't work for Pfizer. So, man, have I got some questions for you.
I said, I'm here for it. Let's go.
Awesome. So thanks again for being here today, Liz. But if I may, because this show frequently talks about if you had no friends, family, or cash, how do you become more successful in these different fields? And I think that introducing yourself is one of the most important skills you can develop. So in regards to real estate, can you introduce yourself, please, Liz?
Sure. So my name's Liz Benchwell. I'm out of Madison, Wisconsin. Currently investing in single family homes for rentals. I'm going to be doing a joint venture with my brother who also has single family homes. And we're going to be purchasing a multifamily property. So really excited about it. I've gotten to meet some really cool people in the investor community like yourself. And yeah, I do vaccines for my day job.
Awesome. I'm going to have that tattooed on me. It's like she called me cool. Anyway, so your alter ego, just for argument's sake, it is directly related to the vaccine department of one of the world's largest drug, pharmaceutical, health-related stuff companies, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And just for argument's sake, even though it's almost 9 in the morning where I am, it's 8 where you are. But for argument's sake, just to loosen up before this show, we were doing shots just before this show. We're shot. So anything Liz says today doesn't even necessarily reflect her own views. And they definitely don't reflect the views of any company that you've ever worked for, do work for, will work for. And here it's okay to say Voldemort, but it's not okay to mention the name of any company that you may or may not be working for. Is that about right?
Correct. Yeah, I've had so many shots, I don't even know where I am right now. So you can't trust anything I'm going to say.
Yeah, woo-wee. Yeah, just party animals over here, right? So now, because a lot of people who watch this show, they aren't paid by the hour, I want to start with the biggest cliffhanger. We'll discuss vaccinations and the discussion about that shortly, but I already told you where I stand on that back on Monday. You were talking about, a different kind of shot, but the $1 billion question I have for you, the person who doesn't work for Pfizer, I should add, you also don't work for Moderna. Moderna is the, I think. Right. So that's the other one that I know has an approved vaccine right now. But you work directly with the marketing or sales of the vaccine. Is that correct first?
Yeah, so I'm an account manager. So I work with large health systems in the area for the portfolio of vaccines they use for pediatric, adolescent, and adult vaccines.
Okay. And I imagine you have an extensive knowledge of the approval process for vaccines, right?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And I think that's one of the things that, I don't know that the government did themselves any favors in calling it Operation Warp Speed. Because I think, and it's totally fine to question things. And I think the people that do come from a good place, but when you call something warp speed, it doesn't exactly
instill confidence, right?
What's that?
It doesn't really instill confidence. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the same process. They all went through the same process, but it's just been expedited. So one of the good things that we think will come out of it is just realizing that some of the steps in the process can be speeded up or sped up. So I think that's one good thing, and looking at the silver lining that could come out of this is just that the process it doesn't need to take a year to go through approvals once it gets to the FDA. So.
Right. So the $1 billion question that I had for you is, with all you know about vaccines, are you planning on taking the competitor's COVID-19 vaccine?
Yes, absolutely. And I know people that have gotten it already in healthcare. I've just heard things like similar to the flu shot, sore arm, stuff like that. But absolutely, I would definitely get the vaccine when it becomes available to me.
Awesome. So there you go. We can go now. All right. See you, everybody. No. But I was talking to my friend who's a physician, and he said that there's another distinction that I think we have to talk about, because there's, it's one thing to be anti-vax in general. And then there's another thing to be vax hesitant was the term that he used, just basically having, is there anything about that idea that you can really say, like maybe describe the difference if there is any, or how it affects your industry?
Yeah, and I think it's totally fine to question things. I think the important thing is listening to the expert, talking to your physician about it, because really, I feel like in a lot of ways the world wasn't ready for the internet. Anyone can publish any article, and if it plays into already existing fears, I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole on some of that stuff. So in terms of vaccine hesitant, I think it's more of asking questions and wanting to know more behind it, and that's perfectly fine. The anti-vax, I think, is more in line with like conspiracy theories and total distrust of any of that. And I think that too comes from a lot of just not fully understanding. So I think it's good to ask questions. I would just say it's always important to go to the experts and people that really know their stuff, not Google an article and kind of go down a rabbit hole that way. So
right. And on that point, a lot of people who I think are on the more skeptical, I'll call it skeptical side, I think that there's a very good chance that they haven't been trained in science, and I don't mean that as an insult at all. What I mean is that they probably haven't gone to college for science. And the thing that if I peel back the curtain of college, one of the things that I'm sure you'll agree with is it's filled with people who are trying to disprove every single last thing that gets taught at college. There are people who are trying to say, it's like, no, I don't think that's what it is. I think it is this, because then they'll end up getting, either academic scholarships or, grants for research projects or something like that. So
or a lot of attention. Like, I think clickbait is real, like if people have pre-existing fears, and especially in a time like this during a pandemic, like you see conspiracy theories and things like that, they're on the rise because people look for, there's already that stress level, there's already that kind of like increased paranoia. So you just see stuff like this go on the rise, and we've seen a rise in vaccine hesitancy, especially in adults. So I think all of that kind of plays into it as well.
Mm-hmm. And from a chemistry perspective, because I took engineering in school, so we had to do like all different types of labs and things like that. And the only reason that's important is because the actual chemicals are super duper dangerous. They can melt your skin off like it's nothing. And you get to learn things like basically, if it doesn't have legs, then it doesn't have a way to move. So like if there's a pile of something really, really nasty over there, then you can touch anywhere except there and you'll be okay. And that taught me a lot as far as like skepticism. But the other thing too is it's just the body's ability itself. I guess that's part of the homeopathic, the naturalistic medicine. I think the baby in the bathwater, I'm not saying they're right as a totality, but the thing that they're onto, I think, is the body's ability to take care of itself. And of course, like with a vaccine, it's something where, we're just not very well suited to like our immune system isn't very well suited to take care of these particular viruses, even though there are gazillions more that wouldn't even negatively affect us. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think, next to clean water, vaccines is second next to clean water and its ability to save lives. So we're kind of a victim of our own success in a lot of ways, that there's not a red light that goes off when your body is protected, or the vaccine helps protect against some foreign substance. So I think it's hard to know what it's doing, or always be reminded of what it's doing when you get vaccines. And with the vaccines that are available on the market, there's a good amount of them, and that's a good thing because it's preventing disease. Mm-hmm. But I think it has kind of led into some of that skepticism of those that don't fully understand what it does.
Right. And even though it's morbid, I remember about a month or two ago, I saw somebody make an excellent point about vaccines and their efficacies, which is that all you really have to do is go to a graveyard. I don't spend any time in graveyards, just so that I've made that stuff clear. Like I can't even remember the disclaimer. Yeah, that's my disclaimer. I don't spend any time in graveyards. However, if you were to go to one, you'd see a much larger number of child deaths. You'll see tombstones of children where you just, and it's because of preventable diseases. in general. But there are a few things on that matter that I really want to express. One is because of my background with some college level chemistry. I know that like anti-vaxxers, you know, they complain about, oh, well, there's mercury in it. And, you know, if you know your history, you know that people who made top hats, hatters, you know, they'd end up getting the most awesome sounding disease ever, even though it's terrible, you know, heavy metal disease. That sounds so cool, right? But it's not. But that was basically because they were constantly touching mercury. They were constantly in contact with it, and they were breathing it in. So they ended up having all this mercury in it, and that'll end up killing you. However, mercury is one of the things in vaccines I hear people, you know, talking about specifically. And from what I understand, it's generally a preserving agent. But the important thing is it's in such a tiny, tiny, tiny amount that, you know, it would do nothing to a human body. It's basically like trying to throw some arsenic into the solar system and then trying to poison all of it. There's just too much stuff there.
Yeah,
yeah.
You're right on with that. And I think, again, I think it's okay to question things and to bring that stuff up, but I would encourage people, again, if they have questions like that, to go to providers and listen to experts, because they're going to hear the same thing that you just described. When it's in such small amounts, it's a different story. So.
And that was a build up to one other little fact that I was told from my friend, the physician. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard this before, but he said that on Earth, there's like somewhere around, it's to the tune of about 2 million different bacteria. So we're not talking about viruses, we're talking about bacteria. And it's like 190 something will actually get a human being sick in the correct amount. So as a testament to how amazing the human body is, even though biology is definitely my weak point, I think that shows that we worry more than is necessary. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think also like we've talked about, just if people have a fear and you see something that a random person published online, it's easy to go and to be tempted to click on that, and then kind of it feeds some of those fears if you're not checking your sources and going to people that, you know, really know what they're talking about and have a background in the field. So. Yeah,
I completely agree. And then the other thing that I think comes to mind, which is the main principle of advertising, and, you know, I'm in digital marketing and promotion and all that kind of fun stuff. So just repetition. I've noticed it absolutely convinces people of things that they wouldn't normally, like, you know, at first glance, they're like, no, there's no way that that's true. And then the more times it ends up getting said, the more they end up believing it. And that's a tough one to be in. But
that kind of plays into that confirmation bias. Like we were talking about, if you have fears and you kind of see something, you're like, I don't know. But like, to your point, if you keep seeing it and you kind of have a fear about it, you might be more likely after a while to kind of fall into that.
All right. Oh, actually, that's what I can do instead. Let's do this individually. I'm going to send you this link through LinkedIn, and then that way you can look at it on your own screen and we can discuss it. And then I can just slap it on top of the video. And then there's
Are you
Liz.
from Canada?
Yes.
Nice.
My accent is custom, in case you didn't catch it.
I haven't heard much of an accent. That's why I was wondering.
So I just sent you a link through LinkedIn to the CDC website, and the thing that's it's their vaccine tracker. And this is, I only saw this yesterday, even though you can see it was originally posted on the 17th of July. It's still updating, but it's the first time where I saw it all written out: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, approved, and approved in Canada. So if you scroll down about 20%, you'll see that it has a list of all of the major companies with organizations. Like, for example, I know that the university in Canada that creates, or it's basically the Canadian Center for Vaccines, the publicly funded one. I know that they're on this list as well. But it's interesting that they have little indicators for which ones have done preclinical, which ones have finished phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and which ones are approved.
There are a ton on here.
Yeah. I had no idea that there were this many. It makes sense because, you know, how could there not be just tons and tons of money on getting the economy rolling again, right?
Yeah, and there are some major grants too that the government was doing to try to get these things moving along.
Right, right.
Even those not a part of Warp Speed.
I think whenever you do any like absolutely colossal undertaking, you kind of hope it'll have more relevance than just, okay, well, I did that and the people close to me know about it and nobody else does. And so one of the things that I was saying that would be really neat, and talking to you specifically as somebody who works in vaccines, it'd be interesting to see what your take on this is. What if this pandemic is the last serious pandemic that happens in human history? In other words, like now we've went from getting a vaccine generally takes two years before COVID, wasn't it? Closer.
The shortest term, I believe it, or the shortest time before COVID was like 4 to 5 years. And I think that was MMR.
Okay, and now it sounds like if people are working around the clock, we can do it in 9 months.
Yeah, I mean, for a pandemic,
Right.
it's definitely an exception to it, but yes, we've found that it's possible.
What if that's what it is? It's like people are like, oh my goodness, they had to lock down for months. That must have been awful. You know,
Like if it's the last one, you mean?
yeah, oh yeah, or like the last one where it's you know the better part of a year. You know, if it becomes to the point where it's like, oh, new virus, it's like, oh, that was a tough one. How many people died? Can you live it? 12 people died before we had a vaccine. It was a thing like that. Be like,
That would be great.
right, right.
I mean, unfortunately, I do feel like there's definitely going to be another one, but maybe this is like the silver lining too, is like having processes in place when something like this happens, like a better idea of what to do. Because I think that was a big part of it too, is like people not understanding it. And I guess that would happen again if something else came out. But just the uncertainty and then just not knowing what to do. I mean, even with the shutdowns, like at least in the US, like it's kind of piecemealed county by county. Like there's not a standardized way of, or a standardized process of like, if this happens, this is what we do. So I think that could be something good for the future that comes out of it, is just more ideas of, or a better understanding of how to handle it, you know?
And on that note, when it comes to like if I look at the elections, for example, a lot of people this year, they were very happy that the states themselves, the individual states, run the federal election and not the federal government. Now, when it comes to vaccines and vaccinations and something like that, what can you talk a little bit about the interaction between the federal government and the individual states as far as like who gets to choose what, or, you know, like that sort of thing? Is there anything you can say?
It is very different state by state. We have the Vaccines for Children program. So that's basically to make vaccines more accessible for the uninsured and underinsured. So that's something that is, you know, that states have to provide, or the government has to provide. In terms of like the privately insured, and we do work a little bit with the government, like in terms of in terms of like mandates for certain age groups, like for adolescents, that can vary dependent upon the state, what the government mandates for necessary vaccines or required vaccines. So it can depend a lot based on the state, just similar to anything else, you know, and even in terms of like political views, that can vary state by state. And I don't know a ton about Canada.
Well, fortunately I do. And that's actually kind of a new thing, which is why I delight in it so much. I actually do know the purchasing agent, the person who's in charge of purchasing vaccines for Ontario. And the thing that's amazing about that is that, you know, I was fully expecting that Canada would be last in line for the vaccine. And we're not. And the reason actually is because of public health care. And this is how it actually breaks down. So the provinces control the health care, not the federal government. Okay. The federal government, of course, they can print money and, you know, like support whatever the provinces are up to, but it's the provinces themselves. And because it's on a single payer system, and I'm not a big fan of single payer systems for a lot of things, because you know, ever since I was a kid, we always used to like to give Americans a hard time when they were visiting. It's like, hey, where do you buy beer around here? And of course, we act as stupid as we possibly can. It's, you buy beer at the beer store. You know, it's like, and it being fantastic, but that's what it's called, the beer store. That's the name of the store, the chain of stores. It's owned by the provincial government, and it's called the beer store. And if you want liquor,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want liquor, you go to the LCBO, which, you know, it's the liquor store. And because of that, they are one of the biggest single buyers of alcohol on earth. And the same thing goes for healthcare. Like, even though Canada only has 10% of the population of America, we're not split up between little insurance providers or states or whatever. And that buying power actually put some parts of Canada over places like, from what I understand, like places like California, that has way more people than Canada. And it's an interesting little idea. I don't know if you'd be able to say anything on the subject of insurance and private healthcare versus public. My favorite healthcare system that I've ever seen is the one in Taiwan, where it's part out of pocket and part compulsory monthly payments. It's like $20 a month. But if you want to go to a dentist or something like that to get a cleaning, it costs you $5 US. And they have all the latest equipment. They probably, like the dentist or doctor, physician, they probably actually even got their degree in America and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying public healthcare, but I'm saying, like, overly private. This little pandemic does make me kind of wonder. It's like, hey, if all these other countries got out of COVID with a lot less damage than America, well, what other differences are there? In the US, the fact is, if you aren't sufficiently insured and something goes wrong, you're going to bankrupt yourself and your entire family just to get, like, okay. And that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in Canada, and it doesn't really happen in Taiwan. And that's the thing that basically makes me go, between the handling of the pandemic, it makes me go, it's like, okay, is it time to rethink private? And is there anything you can say about that won't get you in hot water?
And I mean, in the US, we have by far the most expensive healthcare, but it's the best healthcare, but it's also by far the most expensive. So I think those are some good points. I mean,
one thing I can say about Canadians in our healthcare system is that whenever the subject of healthcare systems happens in Canada, it's pretty similar to what happens in America, which is they compare each other. So Canada compares itself to America, America compares itself to Canada, and that's about it. You know, there's some comparison to Mexico, I suppose, but, you know, that's always interpreted as a pretty Wild West kind of situation where, you know, you can get a surgery for dirt cheap, and it's like, who knows what kind of environment it's on. At least that's the reputation that I hear. I doubt that that's how it actually works, but I don't know about you.
The Uber driver that said he was going down to get like stomach staples or like a weight loss surgery in Mexico. And that was my first reaction. Because he was saying how much cheaper it is, but my first reaction, I was like, ooh, I feel like I wouldn't gamble on something like that. I feel like that's something I would definitely pay more money for, to make sure it's safe, it's a clean environment, all that stuff. But yeah, I've heard that even from an Uber driver that was going to go to Mexico just to get a cheaper surgery.
Right. And then with Canada and the U.S., the problem is, I'm saying, okay, Canada is a 100% public system. U.S. is essentially 100%, unless you're a senior, or if you're very, like, extremely financially hit. There's no public health care available to Americans. Is that correct? Other than that?
Well, there is. I mean, there's programs like Badger Care in Wisconsin, where it's for those people that don't have insurance, so uninsured and underinsured. So there are programs to help with that. Is there anything I can do to help you? I appreciate the opportunity of letting me come on and chat. So is there anything I can do to kind of help you out?
Yes, but everything I can think of off the top of my head, it's like super duper weird. And basically, so starting February 10th, I started releasing one video per day, and because of my book being about attention to detail, I realized that if I'm going to explain what attention to detail is, the best way is actually to show it in action. So there's a certain encyclopedic nature to my body of work. You know, I'm going through, you know, one topic. And basically the background is because, well, February 10th is when I released the first video. I started recording them in January, but I knew that the last week of February, even though I already knew, oh, here's something that we could include. So I'm in the, or at least my wife is, she's in the Chinese community here in Canada, even though she's Taiwanese. So she ends up, you know, like they are very closely connected because they don't, like Chinese people don't use Facebook because in China there's no Facebook. So even when they move to Canada over here, they're using a different app. So I'm aware of what's going on. And I remember back in January seeing that they closed Wuhan, and I was like, well, China doesn't close cities. Okay. I've seen, like, I lived in Taiwan for 15 years. So I've seen environmental disasters. I've seen, you know, like all those different things, they happen. Okay. And China doesn't shut down cities. So that was the big hint that there was something much bigger going on. So back in January, I was wearing surgical masks to go to Costco. Okay.
Really?
So, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because I knew it was a respiratory disease. I was watching all that kind of stuff, but I knew that at the last week of February, to make the big jump into multifamily, there was an event in Tampa, Florida that I went to, and it meant that I ended up taking 6 planes that week, the last week of February. So honestly, I didn't. Wow. So I didn't know if I'd ever see my family again, because I knew that, like, okay, well, I might be looking at quarantine, you know, even if I don't even have it, you know, and, you know, all these different things. So I was like, okay, well, I better record all the stuff that as a father, I really, really want to get recorded. And I want the people in my family to hear it from me. And I did the whole thing in a way where I don't know your gender. I don't know your race. I don't know your politics, but I'm going to give you my answer on all those things, especially the most controversial ones. And I'm not going to be a jerk. Okay. So here's what it means to be left wing. Here's what it means to be right wing. You know, here are the different, you know, like, what does it mean to be a libertarian or a conservative or a liberal? You know, like all those sorts of things, and things that could, being, very, very unpopular with some people, but that's my body of work. And so when I do an expert interview, like even with the real estate guys, I can tell you what I was actually up to as well, is because my background was doing tech for real estate companies, and particularly a real estate coaching, a single family real estate coaching company. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But I wasn't doing the actual deal. So what I did is I interviewed a bunch of real estate people. And what I was saying is like, okay, I'm not your coach, right? Yes. You've never paid me a dime before, right? Right. Okay. Is it possible to be successful in real estate if you have no friends, no family, and no money? And if so, what's required for you to even stand a chance? Okay.
What were some of the answers? I'm curious about this.
Oh, right. Well, and of course they said, yeah, absolutely. And the people who I interviewed, coincidentally, every single one was a self-made person. And the answer was always yes, but you got to be self-motivated. You got to be able to handle rejection. And that's the same with all industries. So
that's really cool. One of the things I've been impressed with the multifamily space and just real estate investors in general is just their willingness to help. Mm-hmm. You know, being newer to it, I've been really impressed with like the amount of people that have reached out and offered their guidance. And even in terms of doing deals, you know, I've had other investors say, if there's something that you guys come across, like in the joint venture with my brother, let me know if it's something that you need help in funding, you know, people willing to jump in and help even from a monetary standpoint. So I think that's super cool about kind of the network of people that are in the industry. Mm-hmm. And even like to your question, like jumping into something, what was it? No friends, no family.
No cash. Exactly.
No cash. Yeah. And I think a big part of that is saying yes to a lot, especially in the beginning, like this Exhibit A. Mm-hmm. Jumping in and just, you know, taking the opportunity that's in front of you. So
the question that I asked them is like, okay, so you've met thousands of real estate investors. How many of them would say, no, I'm not interested in meeting any more investors, even if they have cash to deploy?
How many?
Yeah, how many investors have you met that if you're like, yeah, I got money to deploy, and they're like, just like, no, I'm not interested.
I'd say zero.
Yeah, that's the answer they all gave.
With the expense ratio, what do you find like when you see high expense ratios? What do those typically go to that you can adjust?
Okay, well, the guy who I work with and learned it all from, he uses the term hardening the property, and he is using that like you would with a prison. In other words, with a prison, and you build something, you got to make sure you can't make a shiv out of anything. Okay, so the same thing goes for these apartment buildings. Make sure you can't make a shiv out of anything. Okay, so
No
basically, like,
shift.
no shifts. We got a no shift policy. But the best example would be like in the hallways. Carpet is an enormous waste of money because you have to replace it so often. You need I'm going to go quote unquote expensive equipment to clean it, right? You know, like the vacuum cleaners, they're not free compared to like a broom and a mop.
Yeah, or like a
Okay.
slipper.
Yeah, exactly. So if you use, for example, like hardwood floors in your hallways, then that'll actually be way more durable long term. So the investors, they've got more of a stable asset. So those are the things that that come to mind. Well, the other thing too is like, especially when you get into the thousands of units, if you have some sort of consistency with, you know, we always use this kind of granite countertop. We always use this size of cabinetry, or, you know, like all these kinds of things. So any of the operating team, they go into any unit, and it should be basically the same. And also that means, you know, we can get bulk discounts on those bits and pieces, you know, doors or whatever else, depending on like whenever that's appropriate. All right. And to wrap up, Liz, if who's out there who's perfect for you, who should get in touch, and how do they do it?
I would say just I'm at this point just looking to meet new people in the industry, make the connections. I'm not one to say like I don't need help. So any assistance or just networking, I'm looking to meet and learn from other people. So you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Liz Benchwall, and that's probably the best place to connect with me.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for being here today, Liz. This has been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It was fun.